November 22nd, 1963. It's just one of those dates. It carries this heavy, almost suffocating weight to it. Even if you weren't around to actually witness it, you can still feel the ripples of Dealey Plaza today. In this explainer, we're not just going to recount the exact same story you've heard a million times before. Instead, we're going to unpack the actual forensics, some newly unredacted Cold War files, and the hard physical evidence left behind. One expert famously called it the Great American Murder Mystery. And honestly, it really is, isn't it? Today, we're going to step into the shoes of an investigative detective. We're setting aside all the wild internet rumors, all the noise, and we're looking strictly at the physical data, the raw audio recordings, and the government's own declassified documents to see what they actually tell us. Okay, let's just ground ourselves for a second in how incredibly fast this whole thing unfolded. 12:30 p.m., Friday, the president is assassinated. Just 80 minutes later, Lee Harvey Oswald is arrested in a movie theater. And then Sunday morning, Oswald is shot dead on live television by Jack Ruby. I mean, in less than 48 hours, the entire nation suffered this massive trauma, and the prime suspect was permanently silenced before trial could even begin. It was total chaos.
Okay, let's dive into this. The government's immediate response to all that chaos was the Warren Commission. This 1964 investigation produced a massive 888-page report with a very definitive conclusion. Lee Harvey Oswald acted completely alone. 3 shots from the 6th floor of the Texas School Book Depository, and, well, end of story. That became the absolute historical baseline, virtually unchallenged by the government for decades.
But what if we look at the crime scene like a forensic detective, not like a politician trying to prevent Cold War panic, but as scientists looking purely at cause and effect? That is exactly what private detective and researcher Josiah Tink Thompson did. He basically stripped away all the politics and simply asked, what does the physical evidence actually tell us? And what he found, it's genuinely awe-inspiring.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is when you break down the actual physics of a gunshot, things get really fascinating. Tink Thompson analyzed a Zapruder film, along with other home movies, to track the exact trajectory of the impact debris, blood, bone, brain matter. If a shot comes from the front, say the Grassy Knoll area, it blasts debris backward and to the left. But if a shot comes from the rear, like the book depository, it blasts debris forward. It's just basic, undeniable physics.
So how do we explain the debris hitting the officers strictly on the left? Think about it. Officer Bobby Hargis was riding to the left and rear of the limousine. He was hit with so much force by a piece of skull, he actually thought he'd been shot in the chest. But Officer Billy Martin, who was right next to him, completely clean. He was shielded in Hargis's rain shadow. And the officers on the right side of the car? Not a single drop on them. So we have this massive blast hitting strictly to the left and rear. But then, just 0.75 seconds later, blood hits the inside of the windshield and the hood ornament at the very front of the car. We are literally looking at 2 completely distinct debris fields happening in under a second. And the physical anomalies just don't stop there. Think about the ammunition. A military jacketed bullet, which is the exact type Oswald used. It breaks into large fragments when it hits bone. But a soft hunting round flattens on impact, and it leaves this snowstorm trail of tiny lead particles. When trauma surgeon Dr. Gary Aguilar got rare access to JFK's restricted X-rays, he saw exactly that, a snow trail of tiny lead particles. It strongly suggests a second type of ammunition, and therefore a second weapon, had to be involved. So, that is a lot to take in, isn't it? The physics of the debris fields and those restricted medical files alone challenge pretty much everything we thought we knew. But what if we could actually hear the event itself? What did the Dallas police radios actually record that day? Let's move to and see how this builds, because this is where the story takes a wild turn. By pure chance, a Dallas police motorcycle had its microphone stuck open on Channel 1 during the motorcade, perfectly recording ambient sound. In 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations analyzed that tape and found acoustic evidence of 4 distinct shots, including one from the Grassy Knoll. But a few years later, a National Academy of Sciences panel disputed it. They claimed it was just crosstalk from a totally different radio channel. It felt like a total dead end. Until recently, that is. Modern engineering proved that the tape the Academy relied on was actually edited and overdubbed. That original Channel 1 recording, it's completely authentic.
Which brings us to a number that changes absolutely everything. 2.75. 2.75 seconds. That is the exact amount of time it took for the first 3 shots to be fired, according to that synchronized audio.
So the crucial point is why that tiny window of time matters so much. Oswald used an Italian bolt-action rifle. The The Warren Commission's own tests proved it required a minimum of 2.3 seconds just to reload, aim, and fire once. Yet the audio places the first 3 shots within just 2.75 seconds. It is mechanically impossible for one single rifle to fire that quickly. All told, the audio actually records 5 shots, with a distinct 4.8-second break before the final 2 rapid shots. And those are the exact 2 shots that created those distinct debris fields we just talked about.
So the forensic science from the streets of Dallas paints a pretty clear picture of multiple shooters. But to really understand how this happened, we have to look outside Dealey Plaza. What was the government hiding in the shadows of the Cold War? Why was there this intense rush to declare a lone gunman before the evidence was even fully collected?
77,000. Just let that sink in for a second. That is the massive number of unredacted National Archives pages that were recently released to the public. Historians like Harvard's Frederick Lagevall have been combing through these documents, searching for the missing puzzle pieces of the early 1960s.
And what these documents reveal is honestly staggering. While they don't explicitly name a new assassin, they completely blow the lid off the CIA's hidden geopolitical footprint at the time. In foreign embassies, up to 40 to 50% of total personnel were secretly CIA, literally half the embassy. During Operation Mongoose, which was the plot to destabilize Cuba, the U.S. had 14 Cuban diplomats acting as American agents. They even had 2 Cuban ambassadors in Havana secretly on the U.S. payroll. We're looking at a government deeply, intimately entangled in covert operations and absolutely terrified of anything that could accidentally trigger World War III with the Soviets or Cuba.
So we have these undeniable physical anomalies on one hand, and then thousands of pages of covert Cold War operations on the other. With all this data, all these moving parts, you really have to stop and ask yourself, why does this 60-year-old case still completely captivate the American psyche? Why can't we just let it go?
I think Professor Lagevall captures the human element beautifully here. He noted, "We human beings have a natural inclination to believe that great events must have great causes. It's just human nature, right? When a young, vibrant president is struck down in his prime, it feels almost impossible to accept that a lone, disconnected misfit could alter world history all by himself. We deeply, deeply crave an explanation that matches the terrible weight of that loss."
And this brilliantly illustrates why the search continues today. It's not just one isolated thing. It's a compounding of profound traumas. You have the horrific shock of the 8mm Zapruder film burned into the public's memory, the mind-bending reality of the prime suspect being murdered on live television just 2 days later, the glaring, thoroughly documented investigative oversights by a rushed Warren Commission, and ultimately, as many historians suggest, that profound lingering sense that on that Friday afternoon in Dallas, America lost a vital piece of its innocence.
We have so much better forensic science today. We have clearer, digitally restored audio. We have thousands of newly unredacted pages giving us a window into the Cold War. But even as the pieces of the puzzle become sharper, we are left with one final, haunting thought. Will we ever truly close the book on what happened in Dallas? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep looking closely at the evidence, and I'll see you next time.